Welcome to Power in Words, a quiet corner of the world where we gather to find inspiration, draw upon inner strength, and share the positive energy needed to navigate the beautiful complexities of being human. I am deeply glad you are here with me right now, sharing this space of reflection. We journey together in these moments, not as teachers and students, but as friends walking the same unpredictable path. We seek comfort and understanding in the shared language that connects our hearts across oceans and borders. Life is an extraordinary tapestry, woven with threads of brilliant light and heavy shadow. Today, we are stepping into the shadow to explore a transformative observation made by the visionary poet and philosopher Khalil Gibran. He wrote that your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. It is a vivid, startling image, gently asking us to look at our deepest moments of sorrow, frustration, and struggle, not as arbitrary punishments from an indifferent universe, but as the mechanisms of our spiritual and psychological awakening. Think for a moment about the fundamental nature of a shell. In the natural world, a shell provides vital protection. It shields the fragile, developing life inside from the harsh realities of the elements and the constant threats of the surrounding environment. As human beings, we do something remarkably similar. From a young age, we begin constructing our own psychological shells. We build these invisible armors out of our early experiences, our inherited beliefs, and the expectations projected onto us by our families and society. We layer them with the intricate coping mechanisms we develop to survive rejection, the masks we wear to ensure acceptance by our peers, and the curated identities we present to the world to prove we are worthy of love. This shell slowly becomes our primary comfort zone. It feels safe, predictable, and secure. We convince ourselves that if we stay within the familiar confines of this protective layer, we can avoid the fundamental vulnerability of human existence. We mistakenly believe absolute safety is the ultimate goal, forgetting entirely that meaningful growth always requires a dangerous step into the unknown. But as any living creature instinctively knows, a shell is never meant to be a permanent home. It is merely a temporary vessel designed for a specific phase of incubation and early development. There inevitably comes a time when the life inside simply outgrows its enclosure. The walls that once provided crucial safety suddenly become a suffocating prison, restricting essential movement and blocking the breath of the evolving soul. In the human experience, this outgrowing process rarely happens peacefully. It almost always manifests as deep, undeniable pain. Pain in this context is simply the pressure of the expanding authentic self pressing hard against the rigid, unyielding boundaries of the old life. We experience this breaking in countless deeply personal ways. It arrives disguised as the sudden collapse of a long-term relationship we confidently thought would last forever. It shows up as the devastating loss of a career path we had tied our entire personal identity to. It sneaks in as the quiet, pervasive emptiness heavily settling over us, even when everything looks perfectly successful on paper. It is the acute sting of failure, the crushing weight of sudden grief, or the disorienting fog of anxiety urgently telling us the way we have been living is no longer psychologically sustainable. When the shell finally begins to crack, the immediate sensation is one of profound terror. Our human brains are hardwired by evolution to interpret the sudden breakdown of our protective structures as an existential threat. The psychological shock of losing our familiar defenses leaves us feeling entirely exposed, naked to the cold winds of a chaotic world. In a state of panic, we desperately try to hold the fragmented pieces together, using denial, endless distraction, or frantic action to glue the old reality back into its previous shape. This is precisely where so much of our suffering multiplies and takes root. The pioneering psychologist Carl Jung once observed that what you resist not only persists, but will inevitably grow in size. By fighting the necessary breaking of our shells, by refusing to let painful emotions simply move through us, we trap ourselves in a prolonged state of emotional limbo. We become completely exhausted by the sheer daily effort of maintaining a facade that is fundamentally shattered. The overwhelming fear of what lies on the mysterious other side of the pain keeps us desperately clinging to the very structures currently suffocating us. We worry that if we let go completely, If we allow ourselves to feel the full depth of the sorrow, the betrayal, or the anger, we might shatter entirely and never be able to put ourselves back together again. This fear is natural, and it is a universally shared human experience crossing every cultural boundary. Yet if we can find the quiet courage to simply sit with the cracking shell, something extraordinary begins to shift within us. We slowly realize that the pain itself is not the enemy we thought it was. The pain is a messenger. It is the data of reality demanding our attention. It forces us to confront the illusions we have been living under for years. Perhaps we built our protective shell around the belief that we had to be flawless to be loved, and the pain of a public failure shatters that illusion, leaving us to discover whether we can love ourselves unconditionally in our brokenness. Perhaps we constructed our armor around the idea of total self-reliance, refusing to let anyone see our struggles until the crushing weight of profound loneliness breaks that barrier wide open, forcing us to reach out and experience genuine human connection. Every single crack in the rigid surface lets in a sliver of light, illuminating the dark, neglected corners of our inner world we have ignored or abandoned. This transformation is not a process to be rushed or sweetened with forced positivity. Toxic positivity arrogantly demands that we smile cheerfully through the shattering, looking for silver linings while our hands are still bleeding from the edges of our broken lives. True psychological resilience demands something harder and deeper from us. It demands that we honor the breaking itself. Honoring the breaking means giving yourself full permission to genuinely mourn the immense loss of the shell. You are completely allowed to deeply grieve the person you used to be, the comforting illusions you once tightly held, and the simpler understanding of the world now abruptly taken away from you forever. It takes immense bravery to simply stand still among the fragments of your own shattered expectations and just remember how to breathe. In my years of exploring human behavior and emotion, I have seen time and time again that individuals navigating severe trauma and profound loss with the most inspiring grace are never those who stoically pretend they are entirely unaffected. They are always the ones who consciously allow the intense pain to break them open completely. They allow the sorrow to run its natural course, instinctively knowing that this painful clearing creates the very space needed to hold a deeper capacity for joy and empathy later on. When your shell breaks, you are absolutely not losing your true self. You are only losing the restrictive packaging. You are finally encountering the raw, unadulterated core of your own unique being. It is a terrifying encounter, precisely because it requires absolute, unflinching honesty. You can no longer conveniently hide behind your impressive accomplishments, your defined social roles, or your carefully practiced charisma. You are fully stripped down to the beautiful essence of who you are when the world finally stops clapping and all the stage lights go completely dark. It is precisely in this state of emotional vulnerability that true understanding is born. This is the understanding Khalil Gibran spoke of with clarity. It is not the knowledge we acquire in schools or the cleverness we use to navigate social hierarchies. It is an unshakable wisdom about the shared nature of human existence. When you have experienced the breaking of your own shell, you recognize the fractures in everyone else around you. The assumptions you once used to make about strangers begin to dissolve. You look at the people rushing past you on the street, the frustrating colleague sitting across from you at work, or the estranged family member, and you realize that they, too, are walking around burdened with their own shells, terrified of being broken open. Your pain becomes a bridge of empathy, connecting your heart to the rest of humanity. As the author James Baldwin articulated, the things that tormented him most were the very things that connected him with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive. Your suffering is not a mark of isolation or a sign that you are flawed. It is your initiation into the fellowship of the human race. You begin to understand that everyone is fighting a battle. And this realization fosters a sense of compassion, transcending cultural boundaries. The rich understanding that naturally emerges from deep pain also entirely reshapes your fundamental relationship with yourself. Before the painful breaking occurred, your fragile self-worth might have been entirely dependent on fleeting external validation. You desperately needed the prestigious promotion, the seemingly perfect romantic relationship, or the constant approval of your demanding peers to feel secure and comfortable in your own skin. But when those temporary external supports are forcefully stripped away and you survive the resulting emotional freefall, you finally discover an indestructible, radiant core deep within yourself. You suddenly realize that you are far more fiercely resilient than you ever previously imagined. The paralyzing fear of failure permanently loses its tight, suffocating grip on your mind because you have already failed dramatically. You have already fallen completely apart, and yet you are miraculously still breathing. The heavy imposter feelings that used to endlessly haunt your quietest moments gradually begin to fade away because you are no longer exhausting yourself trying to pretend to be anything other than your wonderfully authentic, perfectly flawed self. You slowly develop a quiet, unshakable inner confidence, deeply rooted not in the foolish arrogance of thinking you will never get hurt again, but rather in the profound, tested knowledge that if you do indeed get hurt again, you will absolutely be able to handle it. This specific realization is the true meaning of ultimate psychological freedom. It is the hard-won ability to walk bravely through the complex world without the heavy burden of emotional armor, remaining constantly open to the full, vibrant spectrum of human experience. Living daily without the heavy protection of a shell requires continuous, deliberate practice and immense daily intention. The natural temptation to rebuild those comforting walls is always present, especially when unpredictable life inevitably brings brand new challenges and fresh, unexpected disappointments. The human brain instinctively wants to retreat back to familiar safety, desperately seeking to construct a new, perhaps even thicker shell entirely out of bitter cynicism or cold emotional detachment. We see this tragically often in people who have been deeply hurt by life. They consciously decide that the only safe way to survive is to absolutely never allow themselves to care too deeply ever again. But a life lived entirely hidden behind a massive wall of bitter cynicism is truly a life only half lived. It is a deeply tragic rejection of the very profound growth the agonizing pain was originally meant to facilitate. To truly honor the immense understanding you have so painfully gained, you must actively and bravely choose vulnerability every single day. You must consciously choose to keep your tender heart fully open, even when it feels incredibly dangerous and risky. This difficult choice means having the fierce courage to boldly speak your personal truth, even when your voice visibly shakes with fear. It means daring to love another human being completely, wholeheartedly, while knowing that devastating loss is always a very real possibility. It means passionately pursuing your deepest dreams, even when the loud inner critic constantly whispers that you are simply not good enough. It is the profound daily commitment to consistently showing up in your own life as your most genuine self, stubbornly refusing to ever shrink back into the cramped confines of a protective psychological shell. Please remember to treat yourself with the utmost gentleness as you navigate these difficult seasons of transition. Society constantly demands that we rush quickly through our pain and bounce back to relentless productivity, but the human soul operates on its own delicate timeline. Give yourself total permission to rest quietly in the messy, uncomfortable space of profound personal evolution. Forgive yourself generously for the hard days when you feel overwhelmed, and honor the incredible strength it takes to simply endure the terrifying process of breaking open. Look back at your history, and you will see the undeniable truth of Gibran's wisdom mapped across your life. The empathy and clarity you possess today were forged in the fires of the pain you mistakenly thought would destroy you. Surrender completely to the breaking. Let the warm light pour into the newly exposed cracks and step boldly into the magnificent expanse of your authentic existence. Your deepest pain is simply the universe making infinite room for your greatest wisdom. If this message brought you comfort or helped you feel a little less alone in your struggles, please like this video, share it with someone who might need these words today, and subscribe to Power in Words so we can continue walking this beautiful journey of healing and growth together as friends.